Are you able to see?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And is it in
could
full
you
screen?
move the slide? Could you move the slide?
Is it moving?
No, we are still in the first one.
No. Same side only. No move. No movement.
Oh. Now what to do?
Ma'am, can you take it on full presentation mode?
It is on presentation. It was on presentation mode. Slideshow mode.
Yeah. But the thing is that some kind of syncing problem happened there. That may be.
Yeah.
That usually happening. I could see these things and we could resolve it by attempting and logging out and rejoining.
Yeah.
That's only remedy there. That's only syncing problem. It's changed.
Change.
Now it's changed.
Change.
Yeah.
Slide has changed.
Okay. Now?
Oh,
Now-
yes. Third one.
Yeah. It's working. It's
Fourth
moving.
one. The first one.
Yes. Very good.
Okay.
Let me try again. I'll go back.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Okay. It's moving. It's moving.
Okay.
Moving.
And this is now in full screen or it's a slide?
In a slideshow mode, it is not in full screen.
Okay.
But the
Now
slide is moving.
I'm putting it in full screen.
Oh, right. But in the presentation, that is in the file mode.
Now it's in full screen.
No, ma'am. But it's enough. But
I think for our presentation purpose,
Yes.
although it is slightly small, but I think we can do with it.
What I will do is I will increase the size. But then that will block off some of the portion. Is it too small?
Yeah. But at your end, it is full screen, ma'am.
No. Right now, yeah.
No. Is it in Windows, sir, ma'am? Is it Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Windows. Then please press the F5 button, sir, ma'am. F5, function 5.
Okay.
F5.
I press the F5.
F5. Then there is a possibility of getting the full screen.
Okay.
What happened there at your end, ma'am? It's a full screen there.
Now it is full screen now.
Okay.
I think it's a singing issue, as you said before.
Now is it changing slide?
Now it's not moving. Now the first slide is there.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I think there's a syncing problem.
Yeah, syncing problem. That's only.
Yeah. So I think we may have to keep it like this. Is it too small?
No problem. I think
no problem, ma'am. That's enough. Students can enlarge it in the presentation by touching the screen. They can enlarge it. They can get a view of that.
This is readable and visible.
Okay.
Readable and visible. It may not be the ideal, but readable and visible.
Okay, now it's okay, ma'am. It's
Now it's
okay.
good.
It's visible. It's visible.
Visible.
Okay, I'm just going to size it so that I can also see the.
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay?
Okay, it's okay now.
Yeah,
It's okay.
Now it's good.
Okay.
The only thing, though, whether it is moving or not, that's we want to check again. Ma'am. Okay.
Is it
Yeah, it's working.
It's moving.
Okay.
It's good.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Minimum boundary conditions met.
Okay,
Good,
thank you,
good.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And then Varun, it's our time.
Yes,
Varun,
sir.
it's okay. Varun.
Thanks, sir. So we are starting our program. So first of all of you are welcome to UL Space Club webinar session 48. Good afternoon to all. We are on the 48th session of our UL Space Club webinar series. As you all know, during the pandemic conditions, when the whole world struck to the COVID pandemic situations, we started our webinar series. We could conduct few sessions based on space science, space technology, and space applications. We have conducted a webinar series under the leadership of E.K. Gutsa. We started our webinar series. First of all, we just planned to conduct only few sessions, but we are very happy to announce that we are on the 48th session of our webinar series now. It has passed 2 years. We started the webinar series in May 23rd of 2020. Now we are on the 48th session. Today we have an eminent personality from Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research, Prof.Jyostsna Dhawan. She's the daughter of the great Professor Satish Dhawan. We are very happy to welcome you, ma'am. Welcome to UL Space Club webinar session 48, and welcome to UL Space Club webinar family.
Thank you so much.
We have a few other experts from ISRO and who has been supporting UL Space Club for past 4 to 5 years. I welcome all the veterans from ISRO and other experts and other invitees of our program. All of you are welcome to UL Space Club webinar session. We have the members of UL Space Club is with us here. E.K. Gutsa sir, K. Jairam sir, Shil sir, all of them are with us here. So I welcome all of them to the program, and also the participants. The students are the strength of UL Space Club, and we have the student participants with us for this program. So I welcome each student participant and other participants who have been who are ready to attend our program to this webinar session. Welcome to all. So before going to the sessions, I have to make a few announcements and a few instructions for the participants. First of all, I would like to announce that we have already released the 3rd edition of our Stellar Chronicle e-magazine. UL Space Club has an e-magazine, e-magazine is there. And we have released the 3rd edition of our e-magazine. So the 3rd edition of e-magazine is now live in our website. Anyone with interest, they can access our e-magazine through our website. The link will be given by the student coordinator in the chat window. You can access the e-magazine through that link. So that's about the e-magazine. And we are very happy to conduct this session just after the space camp that we have conducted. During May 23, 24, and 25, we have conducted a offline camp. Our offline activities have restarted with a space camp at Tirunelveli at Kerala Arts and Craft Village, Kovala. We have conducted a space camp. At the first day, we had few technical sessions and interaction with experts. And the next days, we have visited ISRO centers and IAST. We got a chance to visit VSSC, and we saw the rocket launching, sounding rocket launch there, and we got a chance to interact with the project director of sounding rocket mission, and we got a chance to visit the facilities and labs at IAST with the help of Dr. YVM Krishnamurthy sir. So we are very happy to attend that program, and there were 60 to 70 students who were present in that during that camp days. I think most of them have joined our today's program also. That's a very happy thing for all of us, all coordinators of UL Space Club. So happy about that. And I have a few instructions for all. Before going to that, I have to announce that UL Space Club quiz will be there after the webinar session. We will have a quiz as a part of our webinar series. Each webinar session will be followed by a quiz conducted by UL Space Club, which will be on the same topic of UL Space Club webinar session. So during the last 2 sessions, there were no participants for the quiz competition. So that's a very disappointing thing for all the coordinators. So I request all students to participate in the quiz competition conducted by UL Space Club. You can access the quiz with the link which will be given in the chat window. after the vote of thanks. At the time of vote of thanks, we will give a link in the chat window and you can attend the quiz competition, which will be conducted through a Google form. The link will be given in the chat window. Or I request all students to attend that quiz, and there are exciting prizes awaiting you if you are winning in the quiz competitions. And now I have few instructions that please don't try to share your screen. All of you know that our speaker is sharing her screen. So if you are trying to share your screen, it will be an interruption to other students when they are listening to the presentation of our speaker. So please don't try to share your screen. And please switch off your mic and camera throughout the session unless you are asked to switch on it. Because otherwise it will be an interruption when there are some noises coming from your side or some distracting visions from your side. Yeah, it may interrupt other students when they are listening to the core topic of our session. So please don't try to switch on your mic or camera unless you are asked to do so. At the question and answer session time, if time allows, you may get a chance to directly interact with the speaker. So at that time, you can switch on your mic and camera. Now, I would like to welcome our mentor and our teacher, Satish sir, for introducing our chief speaker, Jyostsna ma'am. Satish sir, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that extremely generous introduction. Good afternoon to one and all. I'm really delighted to be here and to participate in this lecture series organized by your UL Space Club. It's a wonderful effort. I really want to thank Mr. Kutty, formerly of ISRO, for his very kind invitation, and Mr. Shajil for organizing this event, and all the students for participating enthusiastically and being here on a Saturday afternoon when you could be doing many other things. So I also want to congratulate Mr. Shajil for his being honored as the best teacher of the Kozhikode district. It's really, teaching is a difficult profession. To be a good teacher, you have to first and foremost be a great communicator. You have to have sympathy for your students, empathy, and dedicated to inspiring your students. So really congratulations to Mr. Shajil for this award. Let me tell you today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Satish Dhawan's life. So why am I calling it a story of Satish Dhawan rather than the story of Satish Dhawan? It is because each of us is part of many stories. That's my belief. It's the story of each one of us has the story of our family, the story of our city, the story of our country, the story of our time in history. Each of us has a very diverse set of influences, opportunities, luck, talent. So how our own story evolves and changes, it changes with time. Now, my father was born more than 100 years ago. So because we can look back in time, we know the course of his life, we know what he did, and we know the high points of his story. But all the students here are young. None of you know exactly how your story will turn out. What I want to tell you today is a story about a man who was born more than a century ago, and he used his time here to do something which he enjoyed, something which he realized he was good at, and which eventually contributed to our lives. So I believe every one of us has the opportunity and power to do that if we seize them. So let me tell you this story of Satish. Why do I call him Satish and not Pitaji or some other honorific name? My father actually always signed his letters in his first name. So when we were kids and we were old enough to leave the home and go to college, we started calling him Satish. In fact, even his grandchildren call him by his name, which may seem a little bit strange in our society where we are supposed to respect our elders. But my father believed that respect doesn't lie in such things. Respect lies in one's actions. So I will refer to him as Satish, just as we did during his lifetime. Satish's work and actions contributed to a variety of individuals and institutions. But today I'll talk about the people who influenced him, without whom I think his life would have been immeasurably different. Satish's father, David Dayal, hailed from Dera Ismail Khan, which is near Rawalpindi, in pre-independence Punjab. And David Dayal Dhawan trained for the bar. He was a lawyer, trained for the bar in Lahore. And his mother, Lakshmi Khosla, was the daughter of a gentleman called Duni Chand Khosla, who was the chief medical officer in Kashmir. And this gentleman, my great-grandfather, was valued for his service during the plague outbreaks in 1905 to 1908. Now, today, when we have just dealt with the grips of a pandemic, we realize the huge importance of public health providers. So the Satish grandfather was one of those. Now, this is a picture of my grandparents, Devadayal and Lakshmi. As a judge, Devadayal Dhawan was posted all over undivided Punjab. And after partition, he was involved in the rehabilitation of displaced persons. Because as you know, millions of people moved across the border during partition. Now, Satish and his siblings were very close. They were a very close family. I'm showing you here pictures of his older sister, Vimla, who was a very talented artist. His two sisters who were closest to him, Primla and Shukla, they were both educators, teachers, like Mr. Shajil. And his youngest brother, Ranjit, who was younger than him by 11 years, he was a fighter pilot. I'll tell you more about his story in a little while. Now, Satish grew up in Lahore, went to government college. Many people have commented that he had an unusual list of degrees. You can see his education consisted of BA in physics and mathematics, then MA in literature, then BE, then went on to do MS, etc. So we don't know why he actually chose to do all these degrees. In English literature, it was at that time, people were taught that the very best job was to go into the railways. And for that, you had to interact and have a very good command of English. So it's possible that he took up that for that purpose. But whatever it was, when he got to engineering, he really realized that that was what he loved doing. So my feeling is that looking back, maybe he chose this different list of degrees because he was searching for the right thing to do. What was it that really stirred his passion? And I think when he found engineering, he found that that was what really made him happy. I'm going to show you two pictures, which are of my father's degree certificates. You can see that both of them are in the second class, okay? Now, second class in BA and MA, can you imagine a person having a second class today being permitted to advance in a very intensely competitive educational environment? It's very difficult, right? So everybody today is expected to have 99, 95% on everything and be, first class first in everything in order to get any opportunity. So maybe we need to rethink whether a person with such qualifications would have been able to progress today. Should we rethink our focus on scholastics? Should we be thinking about how to develop ability and passion and interest in our students rather than only just marks? When my father finally made it into engineering college, he passed the final BSc with a gold medal. And he went then for practical training in Hindustan Aeronautics Limited in the aircraft company in Bangalore. At that time, HAL was actually involved. This was during the World War II, 1942. HAL was involved in repairing warplanes for the Pacific Theatre because the British warplanes would be flown in from the war theatre into HAL for repair. And so he learned practical training on the shop floor. And this was a formative experience for him. I'm showing you here a picture of a group of young students. You can recognize Satish as the person on the left, a young man. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is a group of students who all went to US on Government of India scholarships in 1946. Now, they are sitting here in a restaurant in Minnesota, USA. And what you have to realize is that this was a group that was selected on the basis of a program which had been started even before independence for educating young Indians in the best centers for technical and scientific education because they realized that independence was going to come, not if, but when. And so the government had already decided to start developing science and technology, and this was back in 1946. Now, I want you to look at this group and say, what is it that distinguishes them? Nothing in particular, except that they are young and they look eager. Yes, they look eager to do things. At this point, they don't know who they are and who they will be and who they will be remembered for being. In fact, let me tell you that sitting next to Satish is his good friend Inder Kapila, who was a friend from Punjab Engineering College. And when he came back from the US, he worked on the Bhakra design board with the legendary engineer Henry Slocum and was responsible for the design and execution of the Bhakra Nangal project. So we remember these people now because we can look at them in hindsight, but they don't know sitting at this table that anybody will remember them, isn't it? So it's just like that. All of you have an opportunity to see where you will be in 50 years when you're looking back at your life. So I'm showing you a picture of Satish in his PhD days at California Institute of Technology. He was away during partition, actually, because he left in 1945. He did not know that his parents and siblings, for quite a few weeks, he did not know where they were. But my entire family was very lucky. Everybody was fortunate to survive intact in the tragic upheaval that tore our country apart. I'm showing you here a picture of Satish's mentor, Hans Liepmann, and his student colleague, Anatol Roshko. They became lifelong friends. Sitting in the bottom picture, he's also, and many years later, is Professor Rodam Narasimha, who was Satish's first student, who then went to Caltech as well. Now, Hans Liepmann and Anatol Roshko were also immigrants from different parts of the world. Hans came from Germany, fleeing the Nazi horrors. Anatol came from Ukraine via Canada, and they all came and became good friends at Caltech. Now, the friends that you have during your educational period are your friends for life. So it will be with all of you young people. You will remember your friends for life. At the time, in 1948, here's the picture of him with Inder Kapila at the top. In 1948, I'm very sure that Satish had absolutely no idea that in 50 years, his picture would be on the website of Caltech, remembered as one of the legends of Caltech. I'm absolutely sure that he had no inkling that something like this would happen in his life. Now, here I'm showing you pictures of Rodam Narasimha, who also passed away very recently, a couple of years ago. He was also a student of Satish's, and I also doubt whether in the early days, sitting at the boundary layer experiment on this wall, Narasimha would have ever imagined that he would remember as the wide variety of scientific programs from cloud dynamics to indigenous commercial aircraft. And he was remembered as for his study of Indian systems of knowledge and honored as one of the foremost mentors of his generation. He came back to India in 1951 and joined IISc. Here's a picture of him sitting in Nandi Hills. And on the right, I'm showing you a small picture of a tiny supersonic wind tunnel, which was built in 1952. You can see the size, 5 millimeters into 5 millimeters. So this is not to test anything except for theories, isn't it? Now, showing you down at the bottom is the wind tunnel from inside a picture at the aerospace department in IISc. So, Satish was very fortunate to be selected for a position at IISc. Department of Aeronautics at IISc is one of the most popular departments in IISc these days. and they make all kinds of things. They do high-level aerospace research. They make drones that have a variety of scientific and practical applications. And Satish loved being in the department. He loved teaching. He loved working with his hands. And in his workshop, he loved working with the master craftsmen of the workshop. Here I'm showing you a picture of Mr. B. Ramaya and Mr. J. Doss, who were his partners in building purpose-built instruments to measure elements of airflow that he wanted to understand. I should tell you, my father's, despite spending so many years in Bangalore, he never managed to master the language of Kannada. But the one word that he loved using was the word garagasa, which means saw, because he used to love doing carpentry. So just pictures of the aerospace department. So one of the early activities that Satish was involved in was his commitment to egalitarian values. He participated in the World Federation of Scientific Workers in China, in Beijing in 1956. And the president of the World Federation of Scientific Workers that year was the Nobel laureate Frederick Joliot-Curie, who was the son-in-law of Marie and Pierre Curie. Shown here is Satish shaking the hand of Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. So Satish was not only fortunate to have a great birth family, he was also lucky in love. He met my mother in IISc, and her name was Nalini Nirodi. And she had just returned from US, where she had done her doctorate in cytogenetics. And they got married in 1956. So IISc was much more than a workplace for my father, and for it was the place that gave him his greatest inspiration to work on practical problems. Here's a picture of him with Pandit Nehru. Now, you can imagine living in IISc on that beautiful campus. For us, it was like a paradise, and it has shaped our imagination and given us foundational sort of values that can't be replaced. Here's a picture of Satish in 1965. Now, I'm showing you here a picture of mostly elderly gentlemen, but all these gentlemen, I call them the practical idealists. They all met 50 years before this picture. Mr. Lakshman Rao, Setu Rao, Professor Vastev Murthy, Mr. Krishna Swami, Professor A.K.N. Reddy. They were people who got together to study Indian history and culture and society under lectures by the famous polymath D.D. Kosambi. And they used to meet every Sunday and discuss. Now, these people, because of these foundational friendships, each of them worked very hard in their chosen area, but they never forgot the value of focusing that endeavor towards benefiting a larger cause, whether it is education, appropriate technology, egalitarian values, technology for rural development. Many of these people were part of the creation of the Karnataka State Council for Science and Technology, which works on practical applications of science. Just showing you a few more pictures of all the old friends. Now, I don't expect you to remember all these people or their names. I'm just showing them as pictures of people who were influential in my father's life. And just like that, all you students will have pictures of your friends. These days, you'll have thousands and thousands of pictures because of your cell phones. So you'll have millions of pictures of your friends. Whereas, in fact, finding pictures of 50 years ago becomes quite a challenge. So I just want to show you that Satish retired from IISc in 1981. I'm showing you a picture of his favorite paper plane. He loved to make a paper plane very quickly out of any piece of paper that he was handed so that he could just fly it. Because for him, the whole principle of flight was a great deal of enjoyment. So coming to the issue of interest and obsession with flying machines. So there's showing you here a set of pictures of people whose lives intersected with my father's because of their interest in different aspects of flight. At the bottom right is a picture of Wing Commander Ranjit Dhawan, my uncle, my father's younger brother, who was a decorated war hero. He was a fighter pilot. Shown above him is Group Captain Suranjan Das, who was a test pilot for the HF-24 and who in fact gave his life in 1970 on one of the early flights of that first indigenous Indian fighter craft. Shown on the bottom are Raj Mahindra, who was an aircraft designer extraordinaire, and Professor S.R. Valluri, who was also an aeronautical engineer, director of NAL. These were all friends and deep colleagues of my father's. I'm showing you here a picture of my father's brother Jeet sitting on top of the HF-24. This is December 5th, 1971. So it's right in the middle of the war. Now, although life was very busy for my father during the early IISc years, Satish's appointment to ISRO catapulted him into a whirlwind of activity and expectations at a national level. These were set on the back of India's aspirations in space. Shown here, Satish with Mrs. Gandhi and the great Vikram Sarabhai. Now, the culture, Vikram Sarabhai's leadership actually created a community of scientists and engineers, who I'm showing you different people here, with Professor Sarabhai at Shar, Brahm Prakash, U.R. Rao, Arvamudan, Y.S. Rajan, Bhavsar, all of these people are well known to the ISRO community and nationally. These are the heroes of the space program, early mentors and doers, thinkers. These are the people whose continuing service at ISRO paved the way for its success. Now, the culture of ISRO, as you know, it incorporates a very steady and detailed analysis of all failures. You can't have serial successes in a program unless you learn from failure. And you have to acknowledge the deep learning that comes from loss. I want to show you here a very famous picture of this wonderful machines of the Space Department on a bullock cart. It was required when a non-metallic structure was needed to transport the Apple satellite through the electromagnetic testing. So this is a great example of appropriate technology. Now, ISRO in action in 1983, you can see all of the dedicated engineers in these, what looks now very primitive control panels. ISRO today, a highly sophisticated organization doing, as I said, serial successes. This is a new generation of ISRO. It's a matter of pride for me that women leaders are there at the highest level, project directors, mission directors. It's a marvelous thing. This may not have been imaginable 50 years ago. So it's a matter of great pride for me. Now, ISRO performs an incredibly difficult task. It delivers while it is under the public scrutiny constantly, has to work consistently, reliably, reflecting the tireless work of everybody not only those who conceptualize the programs, scientists, technicians, managers, data operators, drivers, canteen workers, everyone who keeps the place clean. Every piece of work in the context of a collective is important. And I think that's something that an organization like ISRO shows us. I'm showing you here my father's handwritten notes for a lecture. No word processing programs in those days. His focus was on indigenous development, peaceful uses of technology. Shown here is his hand-drawn graph for the Earth observation missions he's drawn a graph based on which year versus the size of the payload that was to be launched. You can see they're all peaceful applications with an impact on society. One of the things that mattered a lot to him were matters of conscience. He was involved in the Association of International Scientific Workers. He was involved in Pugwash, which was a conference, international conference on disarmament. As a professional, he supported Sri Nambi Narayan, and it was a matter of great pride that Nambi Narayan's case was resolved in his favor. As a citizen, he was involved, he had a great admiration for the people who wanted to keep the fate of displaced people in our conscience. I want to then reflect on another group, 4 friends in the post-independence era. I'll give you their first names here, and I will tell you who they are later. Some of the veterans in the audience may recognize them. The young people certainly wouldn't. I'll call them Goku, Shivaraj, Satish, and Rad. So here is a group of people. I want to bring the point that when you're in the midst of working life, you have no time to realize that you can contribute in ways that you won't even imagine now. Maybe even you can contribute in ways that you have no intention of doing. So 3 of these friends had quite standard paths. They did their education and then got jobs and contributed. The 4th one wandered the globe in search of adventure, but then ended up back in science and contributing. So let me tell you their stories. This young man, Goku, won a wrestling shield in college in 1940. But he may never have imagined that he would be Professor M.G.K. Menon, and that he would be called to lead so many institutions of national importance, TIFR, DOE, DAE, DOS, that he would be remembered as the quintessence of sagacity and visionary leadership. Here's a picture of him later in life with Mrs. Gandhi. Here's a young man, Shivraj. He waited at a college function in Wardha in 1930s to come close enough to the Mahatma Gandhi so that he could touch him and get his blessing. He could never have imagined that he would become Professor Ramseshan, who was remembered not only for being a distinguished physicist, collaborator of a Nobel laureate, Dorothy Hodgkin, but also the person who championed the cause of rigorous scientific publications in India. I'm very sure that Rad, who built and sailed a boat, a trimaran, all the way from Ipswich to Sydney with only 2 other people on board. This is the epitome of adventure. Can you imagine this young man thinking that he would return to India to head the Raman Research Institute and be remembered as the creator of a unique institutional model? I also very much doubt that this young man, Satish, who was working on the shop floor in HAL, could imagine that he would become a scientist after whom a very vibrant indigenous civilian space program would be named. So So we have to ask ourselves, were there only these great visionaries and doers were only there in the era just post-independence? I don't think so. We don't know the end of the stories that we see developing around us. We don't know the end of our own stories. I think that's the most important thing that young students should see. I think if there's one thing that I've realized after meditating on my father's life, is that we think that the generation who built India was more committed and more focused than our own. But this is something of an illusion. Every generation is likely to value the inheritance of problems which were seemingly solved by the previous generation. And we devalue the struggles of the people who are around us, including our own, because they are still in progress. So we don't know the end of these stories. So let's wait and work towards them and put some passion into them, because we don't know what they will become. Satish had a peaceful retirement in Bangalore with grandchildren. And in his last research work, he worked on bird flight. In this research, he claimed no originality. He focused on bird flight because he had access to the high-speed cameras and proximity to the migrating birds, which were offered by his frequent visits to Shar, Lake Pulicat, right next to Shar. In the little book that grew out of his work, he thanked ISRO for their help, the scientists at ISRO for their help, but he also thanked the birds for their participation. In his life, Satish studied elements of flight, and he left a legacy that went beyond aeronautical research and space applications. He passed away in 2002. He belonged to a generation that left a legacy of science and engineering in the service of humanity. This generation also can look beyond narrow ideals to the universal. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a cell biologist. I study muscle cells, I culture them, I study their individual properties, I figure out how they work together to make a muscle tissue and how that muscle tissue helps us move. Living cells are individual units. They can be perfectly self-contained, but they must participate as a collective for the whole organism to thrive. As an example, I'm showing you a picture of the Mars MOM image, which is also dependent on collective action. Now, seen from space, our home is a beautiful place. Even if it is not always a beautiful place on the ground for too many of our brothers and sisters. This blue planet is a singularity. It's the only known site of life. This picture is taken from Chandrayaan camera. I want to end my talk with a universal image of human achievement, which is only possible by invoking the collective, something that reminds us that we are not just individuals or men or women or Indians. We are human. I'm showing you a picture here of the pale blue dot. The pale blue dot in the center of the screen is a photograph of Earth which was taken on February 14th, 1990 by NASA's Voyager 1 at a distance of 3.7 billion miles from the sun. The pale blue dot was taken when this wonderful little aircraft, Voyager, had left the solar system, and Carl Sagan persuaded NASA that instead of looking forward and sending us pictures of the unknown, Voyager should turn back and take a picture of where it had come from, of its Earth. This is the backward glance of the pale blue dot. This image shows us two things simultaneously. The first how small is our place in the universe. And second, the fact that human beings are the only species that can create the means to undertake an unimaginable outward journey into the unknown, but at the same time turn back and look at ourselves. The quote which is written on the bottom is a quote from the pastor of a church, Ralph Sockman. He said, "The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder." I think that encapsulates perfectly for us our ability to look outward, but also to appreciate nature and all the abilities that we have been given as human beings to do things. I think this quote encapsulates the fundamental joy of exploring our universe. Voyager is still sending back data 42 years after it was sent out to explore the unknown. Each of us has a universe of possibility before us. Thank you all for participating in this remembrance of my dear father. And I'm really grateful to the UL Space Club for giving me this opportunity. And I'll stop here and I'm happy to take any questions. Sure, happy to. Thank you.
Can I go first? Ma'am, my name is Lakesh. I'm from Alapura. So I would like to know about what is the most important quality that you saw in your father, which inspires you a lot, especially as a person and as a scientist. Thank you.
So I'll tell you, one of the greatest things about my father was that he had a great sense of fun. Of course, he was serious about his work, but he always had a sense of fun and he never took himself too seriously. You know, we do our work seriously and with dedication, but we must let everything sit lightly on our shoulders. Because without that, you won't be able to invest yourself in enjoying what you do. Because enjoying what you do is what really motivates you to give your best. That's not to say that we enjoy everything we do, right? There are things that we have to do sometimes which are difficult, challenging. They may even be things that we really don't like, but we have to take them on board. But at the end of the day, you have to find some core of satisfaction and enjoyment in what you do, because that is what will propel you to do your best.
Thank you.
Come on, dear children, come on.
You can ask me anything. Don't feel that it has to be some deeply...
You have a wide canvas here. You have a wide canvas.
We're just here to chat.
You heard in 40 minutes or so a great story of a making of not only a person, a legendary scientist, a legendary leader of scientific institutions in India. So you'll have a lot of things to ask. Please ask. You are yourself making, your own future and your own roadmap for your future. So this will help you.
So let me ask some of the students, what do you worry about the most? What is your deepest anxiety about, different ones of you are at different levels in your class. So what do you worry about?
I am struggling with imposter syndrome.
With imposter syndrome, we struggle with that our whole lives. Okay? We all feel that we don't really deserve to be where we are. Okay? But you have to take it on board. And you have to say, okay, so what if somebody else doesn't believe that I should be? I believe that I am doing what I can at this moment in time. I'm giving my best effort. And you do it. Don't worry about who will judge you or how you will be judged, right? If all these guys that I told you about worried about how they would be judged, they wouldn't have done anything, right? They just got up and did what they had to do. And it's only with the benefit of hindsight that we can say, oh, they did great things, right? But while they were doing them, they didn't really necessarily, they had conviction, but they didn't know how they were going to be judged. So don't struggle with imposter syndrome.
Come on, my dear students, come on.
Yes, Sundar
Yeah.
Rajan has raised a hand. Let's go for it.
Madam, can I ask I don't know whether this is a right question or not, but I want to ask.
Sure.
I worked in SLV project.
Okay.
And I have worked closely with Professor Dhawan also.
Wonderful.
So I
Pleased
want
to
to
meet
get
you.
something inside. I have interacted with him very closely. After the first SLV3 failure,
Yes.
it was okay in Shar. I want to get to know what his reaction when he came home. How did he handle that personal thing? Yeah.
That I've often looked back on that time and realized that somehow we never, as kids, we knew what was happening because he would talk to us about, in those days, at least it was very much the case that everybody sat together to have dinner, even if yes. And he would discuss these things, but we were protected from the anxieties. He must have felt many anxieties, but he did not articulate them to us. So that's what I was just saying, that if you let both troubles as well as, honors, if you let them sit lightly on your shoulder, then you can go to the next day. You can see the next day in front of you. I'm convinced that 1979 must have been unbelievably difficult period, but we somehow never felt it,
Okay.
So, but I do remember my mother told me the story of 1980, that after the successful launch, when they were coming back, driving back from Sriharikota, it was very early morning. The launch had happened the previous day. The press conference and all that was over. And they were coming back early in the morning. And they stopped at one of the roadside dhabas to have a cup of tea. And they got a newspaper. And at that time, my mother said, I forget who else was in the car. A couple of other people from ISRO were also in the car. And they were jubilant. They were so delighted to see the picture on the front page. Of course, they had been there the previous, but it was a great delight for them. So my mother remembered that lifelong, that exhilaration of that moment.
Those are the precious moments, madam. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jairam, Vijay.
It's very nice to see your face.
Yeah.
Jairam, another colleague of Professor Dhawan, who worked very closely like Sundar Rajan.
Hello.
Jairam.
Dr. Jyostsna ji, very nice afternoon. A fantastic talk, I should tell you, because somebody comes and talks to the understanding of the students, coming down and talking with them in that language, with the side special effort from your side. And of course, we know about Professor Dhawan many things, but you brought in something which we are not at all knowing. And of course, I didn't know that he was a second class in MA, BA, and all that.
Absolutely.
It's some news which is giving us that goosebumps. Every time you hear about our leaders, we have some feeling, but sometimes like hearing from the family, hearing from a daughter. Of course, you didn't talk about your father as father. He told Satish. And of course, for us also, he was Satish. I worked in Hydrabad onwards.
Yes.
In 2018. I had very close interaction a few times with Professor Dhawan.
Wonderful.
Every time I met him, we learned something from him. But now something I learned from you about him. Thank you, because we know about Goku, we know about Shivaraj, we know about Rad, we know about CNR Rao, we know about Professor Rao, because I'm a student of Professor UR Rao. So when you talk, for me, it's triggering all the old memories which we have gone through, and we learned more from you than what we were knowing on our own. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was an excellent talk, prepared for receiving it 100% by the students,
Audience specific.
to you. What Jairam said, Vijay said is perfect. And I'm extremely happy that we were able to provide this kind of an opportunity for students to listen to a
I would
person.
have been very happy if students asked a lot of questions to her. That's why
Yeah.
I'm a bit disappointed.
That is true. So
That's fine.
Can I make a comment here?
Yes.
I feel that they don't know Professor Dhawan. We know. So thank you, madam. You showed a side which we did not know.
Yeah.
First time I'm hearing this, I was curious, and really now I can, as you say, on hindsight, you can put it all together.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I can see it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
The culture that is brought into ISRO as a great personal influence of Professor Dhawan. As I joined in ISRO, when Professor Dhawan was the chairman, I could see, what Jyostsna said about calling her father Satish. I was calling my boss as sir, because I came from a different culture to ISRO. And he listened to me once or twice. Later he told me, Kutti called me as Rajan. Y.S. Rajan was my boss.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
So he called me Rajan. But he did not tell me initially. He told me after, he wanted to wipe out the kind of thing which are natural in me. He sat on one side of the table as if we are friends. Then he started conversing. The kind of culture Professor Dhawan brought, I seen that. And early enough, I had a opportunity to interact with Valluri, Rodam Narasimha, later until his almost last Niyas days, etc. So that is something, Professor Dhawan's, the quality, the standard, the passion, the ability.
There are a couple of raised hands, I think.
Yeah.
Mr. Swaminathan.
VLS. He's an ISRO man.
That's what I thought. I think you're muted, sir. You can just unmute. Yeah.
VLS unmute. Okay.
Hello. Still not able to hear. Maybe you have to increase the volume in your computer.
Not audible, VLS. Not audible. Not audible.
He can put a comment in the chat box if he can. I think in the meantime, we can go to Mr. Suresh Nambiar. You have to.
It was an interesting talk. I joined in 1983.
Okay.
Satish Dhawan was the chairman, and we were looking up to him whenever he visited PSSC as well as for. I joined during ASLV time frame.
Okay.
And whenever ASLV time launch and all, he used to be there. And we nurtured that culture. It is still continuing in ISRO. That is a wonderful thing. So we still work as Satish envisaged for our community, and we are reaping the benefits of that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So students, you're all too shy, or you have something else to do on Saturday afternoon?
Varun, any of your students are interested to ask question, Varun?
Yes,
Shreya? I think. Yes, ma'am. Hi, Shreya.
Nehita.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Actually, I'm studying currently in 10th, ma'am. Actually, I didn't know about Satish Dhawan as well. Since you mentioned it, I just got to meet that today Jyostsna Dhawan is telling about her father and giving a motivational story. It was indeed a motivational story, ma'am. I was literally motivated, what will happen after 50 years, we won't be knowing. I don't know where will I be sitting after 50 years or what. So,
well, you never know. What is your favorite subject right now in 10th standard?
Ma'am, right now in 10th standard, I love biology, ma'am.
You love biology? Wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, follow your passion.
Yes, ma'am. That's the best, that's the best subject I scored the most.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Biology is a great subject.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Keep at it.
We study about our own environment and human body structure and etc. And
Yes.
it was a pleasure to listen to you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And
You're very
moreover, yes, ma'am. And moreover, when all the the scientists and the people who the reputed guests who are over here, when they say that students are not asking questions, I felt I didn't know anything about the Satish Dhawan. That how would I ask a question about him regarding his life? If we would have known about him, I would have asked still more questions. But I had the pleasure to learn about him.
Well, good. So, one of the things that's really interesting to me is that we don't have sufficient books or, information about different people within our own country. We always get sort of completely focused on achievement-oriented things like Nobel Prizes and all of those things. That's not to say that they're not important. They are very important. But there are people all around us who are doing great things. And it's a question of having sufficient interest to go and find out, even at a local level, what are people doing in different areas? It need not be in science or in education. There are people who are impacting their local environments. So it's a good opportunity for students to just be more curious about what motivates people. Go and ask people, why do you do what you do? Because
Yes,
that
ma'am.
helps you to understand why you do what you do.
Yes, ma'am. That's true, ma'am. It was a pleasure speaking with you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can I go on?
Yes. Hi, is that Snehita?
Yes.
Hi.
Ma'am, you have already told about the people who influence your father's life.
Yes.
So, who are the people who inspire and influence your life apart from your father?
Well, I'll tell you, my mother, okay? My mother influenced me a lot because she was very unconventional and free-spirited and wanted us to grasp whatever we did with passion. And so she encouraged us to do different things, reach out. She was a biologist herself, and she was very fond of plants. And she gained that knowledge about plants from her father, who was completely self-educated in understanding about plants. So on the basis of his own information and education and understanding, my grandfather taught himself about horticulture and botany, and he started writing in the newspaper small articles in 1915 to 1918. Okay, so I'm talking about more than 100 years ago. And because he wrote well, my grandfather collected his articles into a small book. And on the basis of that book, he was given admission to a university in the US in 1920.
Oh,
So can you imagine a completely self-educated person getting a scholarship, okay, on the basis of just whatever work he did himself, okay? After that, he managed to go to the US, and in those days, it was considered a terrible thing. You should not cross Kalapani. Why are you going there? What are you doing? Anyway, he managed to go. And he came from a humble family. But because he had a passion to understand about plants, he learned. And he brought back knowledge. He developed different varieties of avocado. Do you know the fruit avocado? He's the one who introduced it into India. And he did research on that. And all the while he had to have a job because he couldn't get a job doing any horticultural stuff. He had to have a job. He was a translator, okay, in the Madras presidency at that time, before World War II. At the time of World War II, they had to move to Bangalore. Then he retired. But he continued to be passionate about plants. He worked with horticulturists in Lal Bagh. He developed new gardens. He participated in the Grow More Food campaign. So all from self-education and motivation. Okay, so these are people who inspire me. And who are the other people who inspire me? My students inspire me. Every day they come in and they have to do experiments, most of which fail, but they come back the next day and they do more experiments. So, so I call it inspiration 360. You should look all around you, 360 degrees, and you'll find people to be inspired. So being inspired actually is more about appreciating people and actually just observing. If you observe people around you, rather than judging them, when you observe people, you will see that everybody works against all kinds of barriers and challenges. But some people seem to be able to overcome those barriers and challenges. How do they do it? It's worth thinking about.
good. Very nice. Very nice. Snehita, you got what you wanted?
Yes, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, wonderful.
Come on, Mr. Manoj.
Good evening. Good evening,
evening.
madam. Good evening, everybody. All dignitaries, everybody.
Hi.
I am actually, I am from a biology background. I did my master's in zoology. And later I joined, I got a CSR fellowship. I joined for research also. And while doing some works on birds, I, by chance, I found that a bird called black-headed ibis nest in Kerala for the first time. It was a first time record. And I went through some research. Naturally, we require some reference materials. So I collected some reference materials, and deliberately, when I gone through the materials, I wanted to refer two personalities. That is one Dr. Salim Ali, and the other one is Dr. Satish Dhawan. So because sir has authored a book on how birds fly.
Yes.
Being basically from other science background, not a biology personality, but still he attempted to articulate the knowledge in multidisciplinary approach, actually. That's a great thing which we require in our country, in our academics as well. And the publication appeared in Current Science also.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
So it was.
actually,
I think that publication appeared in Current Science only because of these reference materials, because of Dr. Satish Dhawan's book and Dr. Salim Ali's reference materials.
Wonderful.
That reference materials actually supported my publication. So I'm very much thankful
Congratulations.
and I'm very happy to see you all. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
nowadays, it's a very good initiative by these teachers and students. It should continue. That's my wish.
Okay, thank you. This when you talk about the passion of birds and plants, I had an occasion after Professor Dhawan retired. He continued his passion of looking at the birds flying in his office in
Yes.
Antariksha Bhavan. He was in front of the TV watching about this thing, and many a time I had need to interact with him or take his advice or communicate something. I used to go and find it. One few days I could spend with him in Sriharikota in Pulikat Lake when he went there for a bird watch, and Mrs. Dhawan came for looking for plants. So
Yes.
I was deputed officially by Professor U.R. Rao to be
Okay.
with them in Sriharikota. So that gave me the kind of passion one has to see to believe it. At that age, they find it difficult to venture into the forest and getting into the kind of weeds and other things. That age was not a barrier at all for them.
No.
Passion, fantastic.
Yeah.
Actually, we learn many things from most of the things we learn from nature.
Yes.
So Satish sir, perhaps he might have rightly chosen the teacher from nature. That may be the thing.
No, you're right. He was interested in any aerodynamically active object.
Yes.
So whether it was a bird or a leaf fluttering in the wind, he would always describe if you're walking, and we used to go for walks in IISc campus, and he would always describe anything that is moving. He would, sort of get excited about the principle behind it. And he would tell us. So many of those words, I remember the names of all those people, but I don't know the physical, basis of it. But I remember my father's excitement in his voice talking about each one of those physical principles.
Yes, yes.
One quality which these days we all cherish, but we don't practice much. Probably it applies to most of us or each one of us. One is that, when we are unhappy with the people with whom we are working, whether we are supervising them or we are colleagues or peers and all that, is that some intolerance about a mistake committed or an act which they are not supposed to do and things like that. I have many occasions to see that's happening. But when it comes to Professor Dhawan as a boss, the way he handles, without giving a negative feeling in the person who did the wrong or the mistake or whatever you call it, is something super. The way, he will make the other person realize in beautiful language and bringing the right context and right example, etc., instead of directly accusing or pointing out his finger. It's something, it's art. It's an art. One has to see to believe it. I have not seen him shouting it or talking with a kind of a emotion which will hurt the other person. That hurt him. It's not there at all with him.
Yeah. He had a generosity of spirit.
Yeah.
He always believes that youngsters know more than you.
Oh.
Exactly.
That is one
Always.
of the lessons we learn from him.
Yeah,
He taught us
Jay.
in ISRO culture what is one of the intellectual irreverence.
Yeah.
Intellectual irreverence. You can see one youngest boy getting up and asking question to chairman in a review in ISRO.
Yes.
Because of that capability, what Professor Dhawan taught us. So for us, ISRO culture is that intellectual irreverence with respect. Constructive intellectual irreverence. I think that's the greatest thing we all learn from him. A great man.
Yeah, great.
It's very important, because if you don't question, you don't learn. And it's very often things that we think are, self-evident. A young person will point out that there is a flaw in the thinking because it has not been properly sequenced or articulated. So I find that, it's really important to be able to listen, without having any hierarchies, because otherwise you don't really learn.
Yeah, in this context, I have seen Professor Dhawan. It was something a sight which I could not digest initially. I used to see Chairman Professor Dhawan coming and sitting in the among the people who are listening to a talk or a review, in a review mechanism or whatever in that context. He'll be coming and sitting with the masses here, with the junior scientists and listening, and as if he is learning. He wants to learn. He wants to brush up. He wants to contribute to something. Learning, contributing, and team effort. He showed a lot of examples of that. He used to come and sit. So initially people couldn't go well with it, but he made it a system. He used to come and sit. Something normally big leaders will find it very difficult to do it. They will be always sitting in the citadel only. Isn't it, Sundarajan?
No, that's what I want to say something here. The one thing I learned from him is, even in a big review, I can get up. I'm a very, very junior engineer. I can get up and tell the chairman, whatever you are saying is not correct.
Exactly.
I have argued with him, technical, and he never gets upset. He says, you tell me your viewpoint. We used to discuss. And finally, if he feels it is right, that he will accept. That culture has come to ISRO. Definitely. Not me, all my colleagues, my bosses, everybody has learned. Even Mr. Kalam, I used to say, you are doing wrong. And he doesn't. He asked me to explain. So that is the culture, and in a scientific community, that is a very important characteristic for a researcher. And just to ask this question, I just yesterday I put a note in the LinkedIn. I will quote that. Some quote, I think it is Einstein's. If you ask a question, even the question is silly, you are a fool only up to that time. If you never ask a question, you are a fool for your entire life.
Yep. I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And I learned it from Professor Dhawan. Really, in practice. He didn't preach or he didn't advise. By the way, he is asking the questions and analyzing. We learned a lot working with him. Definitely, I should say that. Yeah.
So,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. It was a really interesting talk. Okay, Abhiram is there. He's about to say something. Welcome, Abhiram.
Abhiram, yes, come out.
Okay, sir. Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. First of all, I'm really sorry to be late. As a student who interested in aerodynamics, I'm also thrilled to know about more about Satish Dhawan, sir. And first of all,
he's a +1 student, Abhiram.
Okay.
Yes, so,
carry on,
first of all, thanks for such a wonderful session in front of us. And ma'am, I have a question to you that as a daughter of such a great man like Satish Dhawan, who worked for the ignition of present India, and you as a biologist, what is your comment about the threat that created by science to our environment, or how long can both science and environment can travel together?
So, in many ways, I think that the fact that we even understand what the threat science poses to the environment is dependent on scientific research, right? It is evidence-based. Now, what the very important question that you're raising is that all technologies are double-edged, isn't it? Some of them, they give you new knowledge, but they can also have a negative impact. For example, if you look at nuclear energy, if you use peaceful uses of nuclear energy, what a marvelous thing it is. But the creation of weapons of mass destruction comes from the very same source, isn't it? So what I think we have to understand is that it's not just as scientists that we can view any problem. There are very important policy decisions that have to be taken, and those have to be based on an understanding of society and taking on board different viewpoints. Because after all, in a democracy, we have to listen to other viewpoints. We have to ensure that even if you disagree, that you have to be able to have a platform on which to have that disagreement. And that disagreement may actually lead to something more fruitful than everybody agreeing to do something, right? Because you can all agree, suppose we all agree that nuclear technology is a marvelous thing, but we only use it to make bombs and not for peaceful uses of energy. I mean, that's not a good thing, is it? So when we think about our environment and how we are degrading it, we obviously need to change the way we are looking at development. But at the same time, we have to also acknowledge that many of the issues of development are not uniformly faced by all citizens. People who are at the bottom end of the socioeconomic strata require certain assistance and certain technologies in order to make their lives progress in different ways. So the question that you've asked is a very hard one. It's not something that can be solved by a few people sitting around the table, or even which can be solved by good intentions. It needs science, it needs evidence, it needs good government, it needs policy, and it needs citizens to keep their voices in the public domain and to raise a protest when there is something which looks as if it is going against the greater good. So what you've raised is very important. I don't have a solution for it. I don't think mankind has a solution for it, but it's all part of a process that many, many people and societies are struggling with.
Hello, Abhiram. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Abhiram is a student, a very high-class student. He is now in +1. When he was in 10th also, he used to be invited by headmasters and mistresses to talk to students in schools.
Wonderful.
Classes. So that kind of capacity he has, and that kind of a knowledge and
So Abhiram, what's your favorite subject?
My favorite subjects are physics and maths, and I'm very interested about aerodynamics and aerospace engineering.
Wonderful. Exciting topics. So many advances happening.
Yes, ma'am. I want to...
Sorry. Abhiram, carry on, Abhiram. Sorry.
Sir, I want to add one more thing to the point of view of ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you told right, but nuclear science or nuclear weapons will be our last hope for our self-protection in upcoming incurable heavy wars. That's also a fact.
So, but do you think so? Do you think we shouldn't be working harder to actually stop war? Should we not be negotiating to create a societal circumstance in which we don't have the need for war? Why should we be so adversarial? Why are we so worried about people on different sides of a border? We are all people. And in fact, why is it that we are more worried about people closer to home, right, than people on the other side of the planet? We should actually be, in fact, we come from the same history, the same ethnic background, the same, there is very little that separates us. So why do we feel this sense of confrontation? Maybe we should be spending more time figuring out how to live together rather than how to blow each other up.
Yes, ma'am. I agree also with this.
Mr. Sadhavan, are you there?
Right? It's much more difficult to live together with somebody who's an irritant, isn't it? It's much easier to think of removing an irritant. But that's not an option, right? Because if you have a nuclear war with your neighbor, right, what do you think that we will benefit? Unlikely.
No, never. We can make any benefit through this kind of nuclear wars or that kind of things.
Wars don't solve anything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
At least that's my belief.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Navneet.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Hi, Navneet.
Hi, ma'am. So before I ask a question, I just want to mention that it was a wonderful talk. Actually, listening to the story of your father, the infamous Dr. Satish Dhawan, well, it was inspiring in each and every nook and corner of it whole thing. So it was as if a picture was being painted in our mind with all those vibrant hues just coming from there and here and finally forming the face of Dr. Satish Dhawan. It was fantastic, man. So thank you for such a wonderful session. And my question, it might sound a bit off topic. In fact, it is a bit off topic. So if I'm as for my information, you are one of the persons currently in India who work on STEM cell technology, right? Mm-hmm. So today, I think it's a coincidence. 2 days back, my zoology teacher kind of mentioned regarding stem cell technology to me, and I was curious to know about that. So my question is what are the current developments that we are having in India? What are the contributions that India has been contributing to the field of stem cell development technology?
So there are quite a few people in India who are studying stem cells of different kinds. So I just want to make a small distinction for you. Stem cell biology, just the understanding of how stem cells work and how they repair tissues in our body, in the adult body, that's a very important topic. And harnessing that information for using it as a technological or clinical, application, that's a second issue, right? So you have fundamental understanding and you have applications. And we have people in India who are doing both. So we have quite a few people, and it's all over India now. So you have people in ISER Tirupati, in ISER Mohali, in IISC, in AIMS, in INSTEM, which is the Institute for Stem Cell Biology and Regenerative Medicine in Bangalore, in JNC, in Kerala, you have people who are studying at Rajiv Gandhi Institute. You have ISER Trivandrum. So there are people all over India who are researching different types of stem cells. And they may be studying them as isolated stem cells in culture dishes, so growing them in tissue culture, or they may be studying them as part of animals, different types of animals. So even Drosophila flies have stem cells, and mice have stem cells, and of course humans have stem cells, but plants have stem cells too. So there are many different things that you can learn from studying different organisms. And the basic point about a stem cell is that it's able to not only recreate itself, but also give a daughter cell that has the capacity to specialize and make different tissues. So, there are many interesting aspects of how do genes get turned on and off in stem cells? How do stem cells know when to wake up and start repairing tissues? How do they respond to damage? How do they know when to shut back down and once the tissue is regenerated, right? So there are many questions that have to be understood.
Ma'am, just one more thing, how deep are we into this particular subject currently in India? How deep are we in?
So I can't give you a number, but there's at least 40 or 50 labs all over the country who are studying stem cells. And there are many clinics. So for example, in CMC Vellore, there's a wonderful stem cell clinical program where people are using, for example, blood stem cells for transplantation. Okay. So there's a lot of clinical application, but a lot of clinical applications are still at an experimental level. So they're still at the level of trials. Okay. So just like when you have an experimental new drug, you have to first take it through clinical trials before it can become what's called standard of care. So just like that, for stem cells also, there are many things that need to be understood because, any technology can also be harmful. So you need to first assess the harm that it does in addition to the benefit. So that's where we are. So there are lots of people studying stem cells.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Sahadevan there? Mr. Sahadevan? I saw him.
Yeah, he may have left.
He
Yeah.
must have left. I want to thank him, for getting you here.
Yeah. Always happy to do something that Sadevan requests.
Okay, sir. We have Jairam sir, former deputy director from ISRO. Is also along with the space club. Is a very pivot part of the space club. Welcome, sir. Jairam sir. Jairam sir.
KJ Ram, not Vijay. I think. Jairam, are you there?
Okay,
we
sir.
have got Vijay Ram already.
Then we have Sundaramurthy sir. Sundaramurthy sir, welcome.
TK.
Sundaramurthy sir.
Sundaramurthy wanted to ask something.
Yeah.
He had come forward at one time.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I think I'm spellbound because I'm such a junior. I just cannot talk anything about Professor Dhawan because I used to sit in the review meetings because I'm lucky to be joining in Apple core team. So I had an opportunity to participate in almost all the reviews. So I used to enjoy the review going on and then the kind of arguments which going on. No, sometimes I feel, what is this? These people are arguing such vociferously about these things. Finally, what will happen like that? Sometimes I used to worry what is going to be the end result. Then finally, when they come out, they say, hi, hello, how are you? Okay, I missed you like that and all. When they start talking, then that was something new to us, because even in our friend circle, if we fight each other, at least for some time, we will not talk to them. But that kind of a thing, and of course, it's just like I come to know much more than the other side of Professor Dhawan today. That is, as you put down, earlier days he passed in second class. That was really rather, I can say it was a shock. Okay, but of course, this is how I think by this you have really motivated the students.
So I think it's very important to know that, those labels should not prevent us from doing things in life.
Yeah. That is the message. That is the message.
Yeah, that is what. That is, of course, the one thing which of course, when the ASLV was a failure, then he used that one partially successful launch. That was a beautiful quote which it was later, it has become a kind of a standard thing. So partially at the time I was present in Shah.
Partially unsuccessful.
Yes. So because that booster could not separate. So that is how that led to the launch failure. Of course, these are the kind of things which, of course, I recalled all those things. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your recalling our Professor Dhawan the other side. So that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Shajil Mash?
Yes, sir. Actually, we are coming to an end now today, but we have been sitting here for T8 webinar. But today we made a new model, in my opinion, because we are doing in a nurturing environment. Normally in webinar we are giving some informations and other knowledge and other avenues, but as far as nurturing concerned, I think this is the proper way. Directly interact with the heart of the students and make them motivated, make them aware of the things happening around them, and let them lead to let them invite them to ask some questions. And if that is the model, today we have succeeded it in a great extent. So, because of you, ma'am, you adopted a new methodology. by introducing your father and his life story, and from where everything. It was a heart-touching one, and we also a little bit emotional, as I told you, and we have taken it as a great boon for us and for the students also. And this program is there in our YouTube channel forever. That's the thing. So it will be there. And one more request we were from our part too, that we will conduct. We are conducting this program for every month, the second Saturday. And I request your support to this mission, this program of nurturing these things by
Certainly.
by connecting
Anything I can do.
some other scientists, some other institutes.
Sure.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sure that
yes.
I can easily bring people to talk about different things.
Yeah.
So, because there are lots of people who are really interested in communicating science and in motivating students and inspiring. So, that I'd be happy to interact with you and get more speakers for your club.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's
Really,
been really a lot of.
Kuti sir, yes sir. Kuti sir started it for a space. Later, he himself transformed it to a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Without these basic science, nothing will be there. And one more thing is unfamiliar to our students. Their interdisciplinary approach is only in theory, but not in practice. But that watertight compartment has to be collapsed, and they want to realize that in a tree there is mathematics, there is biology, mathematics, chemistry, physics, even aerodynamics is there. If they realize it, they can really enjoy the nature, enjoy the beauty of the science, and that's our next aim, to think in a holistic way of science and invite them, and later they can go for their own higher studies or their own interest of research like that. Okay.
Yes.
That we are. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
So
thank
we are
you,
concluding.
thank you, ma'am. We are concluding, ma'am. It's a last. We have the validity function here. That
Shil sir, before going to vote of thanks, I want to put the link of our magazine and the link of our space quiz. The chat window.
Okay. Okay. Proceed with.
I am posting the link of our e-magazine Stellar Chronicle. We have released the 3rd edition of Stellar Chronicle 1 week ago. So you can access our e-magazine through the link given in the chat window. And as I announced at the first part of our program, at the beginning of our webinar session, we are conducting a quiz based on the life of Professor Satish Dhawan. So the questions are prepared by one of the student of your space club. We will disclose his name later because there are chances for leaking the questions. So we are not disclosing his name now. So you can access a quiz using the link, which will be going to be given in the chat window. You can access the quiz after the vote of thanks. After the vote of thanks only, it will be available for students. It will be open only after the vote of thanks.
Okay, I invite Sahida Kuru for making this vote of thanks. She is a girl. We have selected her from the previous camp. We have conducted at Trivandrum, and she is from Cherthala. We conducted that space camp for the 3 districts, the Trivandrum, Alapi, and Koilon, and the 3 districts, and we have selected the gifted students from there. And these are the new entrants to the Space Club. And I invite Snehida Kurup to express vote of thanks on behalf of UL Space Club.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to one and all present here. Our speaker, Jyostsna ma'am, UL Space Club mentors, the scientists, and all the participants. This is our 48th webinar, and it's such a great opportunity for me to speak in front of such great people. And on behalf of the UL Space Club, I would like to express my gratitude to all 16 delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a success. I extend my gratitude to our honorable speaker, Jyostsna Dhawan ma'am, to take out time from her busy schedule. Thank you, ma'am, for inspiring us with a very motivational story of Satish Dhawan. A special thanks to all scientists for their support, and I extend my gratitude to UL Space Club mentors here, Kutti sir, Shejal sir, Jairam sir, and all the coordinators to organize a series of webinars, even amidst the pandemic, and make this a huge success. Last but not the least, heartfelt thanks to all the participants for their active participation. And we hope that participation throughout the webinars, upcoming webinars. And that's all. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now we are formally concluding here, Kutti sir.
Yeah. It's an excellent afternoon, beautiful day, and something different than what we have been doing so far. We had 48 webinar, including this, and we had something 15, 16 other special programs that used to happen, Moon Day, Space, World Space Week, and things like that. So in any of those things, we didn't cover an aspect of this kind, which in which one can look at wow, how you should be growing as a student in your own, how you choose your path and what interests you and things like that. There's been something, a great feeling, chance and friendship, the kind of highlight given by Jyostsna madam, the chance and friendship in the arc of life is something, something so, it has a very, very intense message to convey, and you did it, madam, with excellence. And you have brought all of us together in that environment of thinking and finding a path for students. Thank you very much. So it's a very nice, very, very special day for us. Thank you so much. And with your permission, we will add you as a member of our webinar family, and you will be getting our notifications whenever there is a program, and it is if it is convenient for you, kindly participate and enthuse and encourage and make our students, to bring out their best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed my interactions with everybody, and it's so inspiring to see groups coming together and forming like this and doing things informally, which really make a difference. And so all you students, you're really lucky to have mentors like this. But don't forget that you all need to mentor each other as well. So.
Exactly, ma'am. We are intended to.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.